Hello, BookTube. Welcome to Waiting Moose. This is my BookTube channel where I talk about booky things, and today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up. This is kind of the last wrap-up TBR that I'm going to be doing because I find I publish a TBR at the start of the month, and by the end of the month I feel pressure to read those books, and at the end of the month I haven't read them and I feel guilty. So I'm kind of going away from that. I think that the reviews have been working okay for me. I like doing them. It gives me a chance to talk a little more in depth about the books and highlight the books that really meant something to me during the month or I had an actual reaction to, rather than talking about holding up all these books and talking about them no matter what I thought. So I'm going to try that for a little while and see how that goes, because I'm still trying to figure all of this stuff out. So today is going to be my last March wrap-up. My last wrap-up for a while. Let me get back to the start of March. So I do read a combination of audiobook and paper book. So I'm going to start with the first book that I read in March. I'm going to do this in time order, not really by any idea of how I felt about them. Time order, when I read them. At the start of March, I was listening to The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which is a World War II based story. So this is based on two sisters who during World War II, their lives take them down different paths. They've got very different personalities, where one is very outgoing and very active. She's an activist. The other one would prefer to be left alone, to wait for her husband to return. She's got children, she's got friends with children, and both of these women are affected very differently by the war and what happens. Who it turns them into and what they learn about themselves and their family during this book is just fascinating, as well as the details that you are given about what happened during World War II. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was very well written. Again, I listened to it as an audiobook, which is sometimes being a different way of consuming the literature. It's also something I'm trying to get used to reviewing, because it's a different experience. You know, the author's voice brings you in or pushes you out. You're very reactive to not only the story at this point, but the author's voice, how they, their emotions while they read it. Do they change their voice for different characters? Do they do accents? So I find that there's more dimension to review in a audiobook. I loved this one. I did give it 5 stars, but I tend to have a soft spot in my heart for World War II fiction. If you've watched my channel at all, you know that I'm kind of obsessed with that time period and I enjoy reading books about that time period. So this was a winner for me. I really enjoyed it, and I liked both Isabel and Vivienne. I was shocked and horrified and surprised, I guess. I don't know exactly how to phrase it, by what they did and what the war did to them. So that's the first book that I finished. I picked up the first 4 books in the Lumberjanes series, and those were the next 4 books I read. They were fantastic. They were. I loved them. I would totally recommend these. I think when my niece gets older, I'm going to be handing these to her going, here you go. Understand. Like, read this. Get it. Get it. These are, like, just read it and fall in love with these characters. I did. My husband did. My husband read it and he was just like, I want more. We need more of these books. So they're on my list to buy going forward. Anytime I see them, I will be picking those up, because those were an absolute joy to read. Oh, I gave all of those 4 stars. Then I listened to Before the Fall by Noah Hawley. Hawley? This book was a bit of a thriller about a plane crash. So plane crashes between Nantucket and, I believe it was Nantucket, and the mainland. And there are 2 survivors. The survivors are a man that wasn't even supposed to be on the plane and the son of the man that owned the plane. Those are the only 2 survivors of this flight. Quickly, suspicion is thrown on the man who survived, even though he saved the boy. Why was he on the plane? Did he cause it? And then there's this whole investigation, and he can't remember what happened throughout the majority of the book. the story is that he can't remember what happened and why the plane crashed. You go through this typical psychological thriller thing where everybody's a suspect, or mystery, I guess. Everybody's a suspect, everybody's believed to be involved. You don't even know if our main character, who is basically the narrator of this book, did it or not. Like, there's enough questions laid about him that you're like, ooh, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, I don't know. Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? Why is this happening? So everybody becomes a suspect at one time, and it was a good read. I enjoyed it, and I gave that one 4 stars. I was really generous with the stars this month. Until we get to the next 2 books, apparently. Next, I read Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. This book I added to my to-read list a long time ago, and it's a book I probably should have picked up well before now. I do like royal history, and this is about King Henry VIII and the Tudors of the 1500s. It's 1500s. Oh boy. Anyway, so it's a historical, based on true life book. It is told from the perspective of Thomas Cromwell, and I think I did a review of this, or I tried to do a review of this. I don't think I ever got it posted. I'm not sure. So I thought it was very good. I knew some of the characters from watching, History Channel or whatever about the book, or about that time period, and so I knew about Thomas Cromwell. I knew about Cardinal Wolsey, and Anne Boleyn and the Pope, and I had a basic understanding of all of that stuff that goes on in this. This gave me a bit more in-depth understanding of how it all happened and what was going on at that time between Henry VIII and the Catholic Church. And I believe this book didn't really go into it too far, because it's where this book ends. There's another book in the series that kind of goes more into Henry VIII is basically kicking the Pope and the Catholic Church out of England because he wants to get divorced and they don't want him to. So that's kind of where we are, and I believe this is how the Church of England gets started, but I could be wrong on that. I'm gonna feel really stupid if I'm wrong on that. I gave that one 3 stars. I liked it, but it was like really long, and it wasn't a good vacation read. It's not just that. There was parts of it where I thought, maybe reading further in the series I'll get it, but I just felt like there was a lot of extra detail that maybe didn't need to be there, and maybe this book didn't need to be quite this long to tell us the story that it told us, but it was really rich in details, and there was a lot of people with the same name back then. There was a lot of Henrys, there was a lot of Thomases, there was a lot, and sometimes keeping straight who was who, it took a little more effort than I'm used to, and yeah. So that may be more of a criticism of me than the book. Next up, Living the Vida Lola by Misa Ramirez. I couldn't remember, I was thinking Lisa. Misa Ramirez. I gave this one 3 stars as well. It's a bit of a Stephanie Plum, I don't want to say inspired, but it's very similar to Stephanie Plum. She's a private investigator. She's relatively new at the position. I did do a full review of this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. 3 out of 5 stars. Next up was The Last Anniversary by Leanne Moriarty, and I also gave this one 3 stars. Okay, so a woman breaks her fiance's heart. Well, he wasn't really, she breaks up with a man when, on the night he was going to propose to her. So basically, he gets married a year or 2 later, and at the time of this book, I'm sorry about the beeping, at the time of this book, she is still single. She's never been married. So she's questioning whether she made the right decisions. But what really brings all of this into the story is that she has been left his aunt's house on an island off the coast of Australia. So she's been left this house, and she's thrust back into the family as a part of this. And obviously that is going to cause some problems. Leanne Moriarty style writing ensues. I thought it was good. It wasn't great, so I also gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. Interesting. It had its funny moments. I did laugh out loud. Here we go. We're in the 3-star range here. Next up, I read The Cozy Mystery, Assault and Beret by Jen McKinley. This is the last book, actually, in the Hat Shop series by Jen McKinley. It is based in England, but in this book, Scarlett and Vivian are in Paris looking for Vivian's husband. They find him, but some crimes are happening at the same time, and they're investigating the crimes. A painting is stolen. Yeah, theft of an artwork. I think he disappears. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. So Scarlett is investigating, and of course all of their friends come over from London, because what would this book be without everybody involved? It was a good wrap up to the series, and it definitely wrapped up some of the loose ends around relationships and friendships and where things go. I liked that, but it also felt like it was a bit of a rushed job to finish off the series. I really enjoyed this series. I actually liked it better than her Cake Bakery series. What can you do? Obviously, that one is very popular because it keeps going and going, and this one ended at 5 books. Next up was Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. I actually, look at this, I made notes. Well, I didn't make notes, I flagged things. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. It's about a woman with amnesia. Every day she wakes up and she basically has to relearn about her life. She finds out on the day starting this book, she finds out that she's been seeing a doctor to help her get her memory back, but her husband is unaware of that. And as a result of that, she's been keeping a diary, and he calls her to tell her where the diary is so that she can read it. And basically the book is the reader reading along with her as she reads the diary. And then there is a fairly intense conclusion because it is a thriller. I thought it was really well done. I was sucked in and I loved it. So 4 out of 5 stars. Great Reckoning by Louise Penny. It is the 12th book in the Inspector Gamache series. I love this series. I love the people of Three Pines. I love the people of the Sûreté de Quebec. The whole thing. I even like the bad guys in this series because I just think it has been so well done by Louise Penny. And this ongoing story that is in book after book after book with these recurring characters, and Armand Gamache, wow, that's hard to say. Armand Gamache, his team's continual involvement, what they're doing to try to fix the situation that was started way back in whatever book where everything went horribly, horribly, horribly wrong and everyone was shot. So that's, sorry, spoiler alert. I can't tell you what book it was in, but everything went horribly wrong. So I love this. I gave it 5 stars. I think that Louise Penny just does a fantastic job with this book. The characters in Three Pines are fantastic. I would love to live in Three Pines. Normally I'm like, I don't want to live in a book. Three Pines is the kind of place that I would love to find. I like how it's this place that doesn't exist on any maps. And in this book, they actually went into why it doesn't exist on maps, and that was really interesting. It takes you back, like all of these, not all of the books, but a lot of the books span time periods, but with the same characters. So what they're investigating in this one is there's a map that Olivier and partner find in the wall of the bed and breakfast. And this map is hand-drawn. It's like an orienteering map. And so it's kind of one of the mysteries they're investigating. And it brings us into, you know, the war. You know, why am I saying you know? But anyway, it takes you back to the war because it's believed that this map was created by or for one of the young men who lived in the town and went away for war, to the war. I can't remember if it was World War I or World War II. I've been reading too many books about war. And then there's this additional mystery where Armand Gamache has now taken the role of running one of the schools, or the school for the Sûreté de Quebec, which is training all of the police officers. And in doing so, he's kept some of the corruption there, like, because he's running it because there was a lot of corruption there. So he's kept some of the people who are corrupt there, and trying to force something to happen, and of course something happens and somebody's shot, and then it goes into the entire investigation from that point of view. So there's really 2 mysteries here: who killed the guy and what's the deal with this map. The stories are woven together pretty impressively, I thought. I loved it. I was engrossed right from the first, which I typically am with Louise Penny books. Yes, I gave A Great Reckoning 5 stars. Next up is Birdie by Tracy Lindbergh. I did a review of this, so there is a full review of it out there on my channel. Go take a look. But this is about a Native woman from northern Alberta, which is the province I live in. And it really goes into her life, but at the same time it deals with AIDS and like a century now, well, 150 years. Canada's 150 years old this year. So 150 years of how First Nations people in Canada have been treated and continue to be treated. It's devastating. It's heartbreaking. I have a review of that. I loved it. I thought it was just really well done. The Devil of Nanking. I listened to this on audiobook. I gave it 2 stars and I could not finish it. I think that mostly comes back to me. I went into this fascinated by the story of what happened in Nanking, and I expected more of the book, the audiobook, the book, to be focused on that. And it's not. I was disappointed by that. And I found that because I was listening to the book for that, I was really uninterested in what the topic of the book really was, which was this woman, this British woman who's in Japan because she's obsessed with what happened in Nanking, and she knows that there's this video, but nobody believes that there's this video, and she's extremely obsessive and not very likable. I got to the point where I realized I was listening to this book and I did not care. I didn't care about the characters, and I was at the point where I didn't even care about what happened in Nanking anymore. So I had to stop listening to it, which was too bad, because I think I'm going to have to look into the history of that. I was expecting something more like a lot of the World War II fiction that you get, where you're actually reading about that time period rather than people in the present day talking about the past and looking into the past, but not really looking into the past. And yeah, it wasn't my bag. So I was disappointed by that. The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman, which is the first in the Invisible Library series. I love this book. I did. And I want to talk about it because I recently, I'm you know what, I'm probably going to do a review of it. I have a plan for a review of it, so I'm not going to go too in-depth in it here. But if you've ever read the Thursday Next series by Jasper Fforde, this book reminded me a lot of that, but not in a bad way. Not in a, oh my god, she just rewrote the Thursday Next series. Nope. I had bought The Air Affair recently so that I could start rereading that, because it's a great set of mysteries based around books. What more can I ask for? I love books, I love mysteries, and in the Thursday Next series, she is a literary investigator who goes and she investigates characters in books doing things they shouldn't be doing and screwing up the narrative in these books. So it's really quite interesting. And The Invisible Library was a great filler for, like, not really filler, that's a bad word, but it was a great series for me to start reading, since I think I only have one Thursday Next book left to read until he writes the next one in the series. The premise of The Invisible Library is that there are librarians in this place between dimensions who are tasked with collecting all of the literature from all of the dimensions. So all of the, because we live in parallel dimensions and parallel universes, so they go out, they're able to go into any civilization in any of the dimensions and gather literature from that. But the main character in this one and her sidekick are sent out to get a specific book, a very specific book, from a certain planet or a certain world. And when they get there, they find that the librarian, that there's just a lot going on. The book's disappeared. People have been murdered. People are disappearing. And there's something off about the person, her assistant that's been sent with her. He's a brand new recruit kind of thing. And this is his first mission. And he's been sent with her to do this. And she's quickly realizing that there's something not expected about him. So I thought it was really interesting. And I gave... Okay, apparently I didn't think it was very interesting because for some reason it got 3 stars from me on Goodreads. And I'm really not sure. The Invisible Library and how the magic system and the world works, I thought that it gave our characters a bit of an easy out in some situations that was disappointing, but at the same time it didn't always work that way for them, so I thought that was okay. But it was the, like, I'm gonna have to read more books in the series to see what exactly happens with this world and this magic system. I thought that by the end of the book, I still had a lot of questions about her assistant, Kai, that's his name, and what's going on there and how that's going to work out. So I was left with a bit of a about that situation. Finally, the middle dragged a bit. So, and I just thought that the world development was really well done in that you didn't get a huge info dump of, hey, this is how this world works. It was like a lot of conversation, a lot of, discussion between characters, especially when they're going from different dimensions, and then the new recruit, or the new assistant that's going out too, who's got a lot of questions about how things work and what's done and what isn't done and why. I'm getting closer to the end, folks. I received The Breakdown by B.A. Paris through NetGalley. Now, this gets published sometime soon. This will be published in July, so I'm a little early reviewing this. I gave it 3 stars, but I will tell you that I thought that, like, it sucked me in. It sucked me in very quickly. It's very tense. It starts out, it's a psychological thriller, and it starts out with a very unreliable narrator. So she doesn't even know what's going on. This book starts out with a murder. Our main character, the narrator, is very upset about that murder. And for me, I felt like it was disproportionately upset. And I thought that she kind of went on about it. It was just really overreacting to the situation. And I couldn't understand why she felt the way she did about what happened. I don't want to give away any spoilers on this, so I'm not really going to go too in depth with it. The story sucked me in with her story, even though I didn't buy how she was reacting to things. I wanted to know what was going to happen, and I wanted to know how it was going to be resolved, because it felt like there had to be something there. Yeah, I'm going to sum this up with a good book with a satisfying conclusion. I still have a bad taste in my mouth from believing she was overacting in the beginning, but overall I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and I thought that for a thriller it was really not that bad. Next up, I have Blood-Stained Tea, the Yakuza Path. It's the first book in the Yakuza Path series by Amy Tasukada. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. It is a love story. It's a male love story based on men or characters who are in the Japanese and Korean mafia. And I struggled probably about halfway through this with the violence, and like the author didn't shy away from the violence. So there's a lot of violence, and one of the characters is a lot more passive. One of them has severe anger issues and is very, very violent. And for me, I didn't like the idea of those 2 characters coming together in a romance, because I felt like, obviously, those 2 personalities, it just wouldn't work well. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the way the book was going, so I ended up stopping reading it, and I gave it 2 stars. Open Season. Haha. Open Season by C.J. Box. This is a Western. It's a bit of a Western. It's a modern Western. It is set in Wyoming, and it's based around the story of Joe Pickett, who is a brand new game warden in 12 Sleep, Wyoming. So it starts out with a man ends up dead, and he ends up dead in Joe's yard. It's also a man that Joe has had dealings with prior to this. He is not immediately suspected of the murder, as typically happens in these books, but he does start investigating because he's got questions about what happened. And as he investigates, he gets dragged into a lot of stuff because it's a small town and things work the way they do in small towns. And there are people that do not want him to investigate this. They want this murder to go away. and he's not letting it go away. So there are people trying to destroy him and his family and his career. I loved it. I really did. I'm disappointed that it took me this long to start this series, and I can't wait to read more in it. So I'm glad that this one was short, and hopefully they're all relatively short, quick reads, because I've got a lot of books to catch up on with that one. That is what I read in March. I am Erin. I'm going to stop kicking my foot because I'm shaking everything. I'm Erin. This was Reading Moose and my March wrap up. I really appreciate that you joined me today. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.